Hi everybody, Dr. Mayer here. This video is the last of the series of videos of giving an overview of thinking about what is your pharmacy business. I started out last week giving you a series of video vignettes from Mr. Olin Sykes, who's a CPA and very well experienced in the main ingredients of what it takes to own a pharmacy business. In weeks to come, I'll show you a couple other videos from him. But what I want to talk about today is kind of give the nuts and bolts of what do you want to think about that goes into owning your own business. We will go into detail over the next weeks, some of the different components that I talk about here. But hopefully, before you watch this video, you got my audio video giving you an overview of that. I wanted you to watch the niche video first, and that's actually where your assignment for next week is going to be coming from. The other thing too is I mentioned in my email that I sent out to you that I will be sending out a doodle here the next day to identify possible times that we can have an individual meeting for you. Okay, so let's talk about what is your pharmacy business. And what I want to talk about today is multiple different topics. We're going to look at things such as the business models in pharmacy. And the one thing that I want to stress here too, that we will use a traditional community pharmacy as our basis for referencing and teaching about entrepreneurship. But it doesn't necessarily always have to be a store. It could be many other opportunities in pharmacy. And if you hopefully finish this course and want to continue on with the concentration and take the business competition, the business planning course in the second semester, what we will go through that course is give you the nuts and bolts of creating your own business idea. And that's why I started flip-flop these lectures, and I want you to think about what is your niche. Think about what are the opportunities that exist in today's pharmacy world. And I know that maybe you've only worked in one place or only looked at the pharmacy from one side, but think to yourself, what are those possible things? One of the other things we're going to talk about is just give you an aerial view today of the different operations and organizational behaviors that have to go on to initially start a pharmacy business. As I said before, we'll go into more detail this semester and next, talking about what all goes into a business plan. And the reason why you do a business plan, just like I teach in Pharmacy Practice 6 about clinical business planning, is that to be able to, to execute, to operate, to be able to get somebody to believe in you, whether it's a bank, an investor, to fund you, you need a plan of why is this business something worth investing for. And you need to also, sell it to yourself that you believe that this is my passion. I want to own this business or start this business. What type of pharmacy business do you want? Think to yourself, what different types of pharmacy business models that exist today? What have you experienced? What have you seen? Obviously, there's the traditional community pharmacy, but many independent entrepreneurs in pharmacy have started other businesses, such as institutional businesses, taking care of nursing homes, prisons, other, long-term care type of environments. There's opportunities in consulting in many different aspects, from clinical consulting to business consulting that occurs in pharmacy. Some people who are pharmacists that have gone into the entrepreneur of pharmacy have helped develop some of the technologies that exist in pharmacy. The very first robotics in pharmacy occurred right here in Pittsburgh, right here with the Duquesne graduates, and right at Mercy Hospital. The other thing you always have to think about is we're going to talk about creating what is that niche idea, but between this semester and hopefully you continue on next semester, is how can you take that idea and be successful with it, and how does this pharmacy business model that you want to create make money? We will go, as I said before, in the chat sessions this semester, go into about the financials and the financials it takes to be able to manage, to operate, and to function as an independent pharmacy. If I look at the traditional independent pharmacy, there's many different issues facing this model. And if you watch the videos from Olin Sykes, he alluded to a lot of those challenges. But I can share with you, as a pharmacist who has been practicing in this area for over 25 years and have been part of it as a family-owned business for 43 years, that every year there's a challenge. And that's one part of owning any type of business, that there's challenges. Right now in community pharmacy, the way a lot of community pharmacies make money is the selling of generic medications. Brand medications are there for your patients to have, but a lot of times brand medications are things that you may make a little money, you may not, you may just break even. But a lot of times pharmacies, the way they survive and the way they make money is how do they actually handle their inventory and purchase appropriately. There's challenges in reimbursement models coming from different payers. And this is something that pharmacy has always fought and sometimes can win. We had one about a year or two ago where there was a major payer in this Pittsburgh area that wanted to cut the reimbursement for immunization for all pharmacies, not just independents but chains. And several of us got together and called them on it, gave us our arguments of why this would actually hurt pharmacy and also in the long run hurt their patients. And although we didn't get back to the reimbursement we had to begin with, we came to a compromise which was fair for everybody. There's also, as you've heard me talk about in other courses, changes in healthcare to being a more value-based outcome. Now more than ever, other professional providers, physicians, health systems, home nursing, are looking for partnerships in pharmacy because they realize our potential from a clinical educational side to our ability to touch patients more than any other healthcare provider, that there is opportunities slowly but really fastly growing in this area. In the last 10 to 11 years, we've seen a growth of expansion of Medicare Part D, especially with our baby boomers. Within the Affordable Care Act, we've seen Medicaid expansion occur at the state levels. Constantly in this model, we are playing the battle, and we'll talk about this when we talk about third-party insurance reimbursements, of making sure that the PBMs that pay us, that lay out the contracts and the laws, are practicing fairly and that we're all on an even playing field. There are challenges sometimes with mail order, preferred networks, and so we'll talk today and in future lectures how that there still is opportunities, but there's ways that through using our wholesalers, companies that help you with third-party contracting, this can still be viable. So think to yourself, what opportunities may exist for the future of community pharmacy type of business? What are the barriers that you may have questions with as we meet in our individual meetings, chat sessions, or feel free to contact me with any questions you have via email or say, Dr. Merrick, can we meet and talk? I'm always open to sharing with you what are those opportunities. What is some initiatives to develop a new revolution of pharmacy business? What do you think you would? I used to have an article, and this last point is a little bit dated, about what was called Retail 3.0. And what Retail 3.0 article said was, if you had to revolutionize the community pharmacy business today, what would be the needs of your future customers and patients? How do you envision that? As you begin to think about your niche, what do you think? Because there's many, regardless of whatever your business model is, what is your expertise that you can bring to customers? What is an expertise maybe you're not an expert yet at, but you hope to do? And sometimes when we're starting out a business, when we have a no idea, We start low and we go slow, just like in geriatric practices. One of the other things that I encourage you always to do is study businesses that have struggled. How have they bounced back? Circuit City is no longer in business. They try to be a deep discount electronic, and in the era of online competition, other competitors, that this has been difficult. Best Buy, which still is in existence, struggles. BlackBerry has disappeared over the last 10 to 11 years because of unable to be, you know, innovative in the software, worrying more about the hardware, living for today. Companies like Apple and Microsoft have seen their ups and their downs, and realizing that sometimes they have to make significant changes in order to survive, just like community pharmacy has done over the many years of its existence. Now, the idea is important, and that is why I want you to spend time with that with the assignment. But there's also multiple things that you have to know. As you've heard me say in the chat sessions, and I'll say again, the two most important people you want to seek out as you're starting a pharmacy business is a good lawyer and a good CPA. Because these two professions will help you in setting up legal structures, also in helping set up your financials and being able to evaluate your future financials. There's other ways to find resources. Your pharmacy organizations, NCPA, which represents independent pharmacy, is a great resource for multiple things. Your wholesaler, who you seek out, can help you with a lot of these things. Going to your state associations, asking them for contact with expertise and advice, because there's multiple things that have to occur in a business. So the thing that what we want you to be thinking about is you will constantly having to do your homework, especially when you're creating this business plan. There will be research and research. This is one place that I encourage you not to, to use Google, to use resources to find that. Think about, what is your business name? You will have to obtain appropriate licenses for business from federal, state, and local, and possibly seller permits. You'll have to obtain the various amounts of insurance, fire, theft, professional liability. Why it's important to have a CPA, they will help you decide on what is your business structure. And most of this will help you in terms of protecting yourself and paying the minimal amount of tax. The other thing is you'll have to pay other taxes, sales tax, self-employment tax. And so there's numerous things that go on into that. Once again, some of these regular business things, a good CPA and lawyer will help guide you along the way. But when you're getting started, you come up with a checklist. The key one is creating a good sound business plan, and we'll walk you through that this semester or next. Other things is finding out what is the right location. Setting up if you're going to lease, getting a good lease. With this business plan and planning, you'll find out what all the startup costs and startup funding you'll need. So you will need to either secure that with getting loans from the bank, investors, your own savings. What are the various license and permits? If I want to get into, besides selling prescriptions, get into durable medical equipment, be able to bill for Medicare B, such as immunizations, diabetic shoes. Wherever I pick, regardless if I lease or buy, I will have to do some remodeling. I'll need equipment, furniture. I'll need shelving to be able to sell my products or store my products. A wholesaler can be a big asset to you. A wholesaler is more than just somebody who gives you product. We currently, in the businesses that I work with, we work with Value Drug. Value Drug is an independent wholesaler that is actually a co-op, that those who buy from Value become stockholders of Value. And Value has been in business for close to 80 years, ensuring the business of independent pharmacies here in Pennsylvania and surrounding states. There's other different wholesalers out there, and I encourage you that if you do go into this business, that you evaluate each one before you make your final decision. but you always want to find the one that wants to be in your corner to help keep you in business, because they only stay in business if there's pharmacies in business to be able to purchase product. The other thing a wholesaler or your associations can help you do is research what type of point of sale computer do I need to be able to, um, you know, ring up transactions, take collections of payment, to be able to track what sales tax I owe. Pharmacy software is more than just being able to fill a prescription. What is its ease to be able to bill insurances? What are the clinical software components it has as we move to a more of a clinical model in community pharmacy? What is the reporting that I can get out of it to help me do analysis of my business to plan for future growth? How do I negotiate and get third party contracts? Some of these are directly contacting the top payers in your area. There are companies out there that also can act on your behalf to get signed up for contracts. If I want to do something clinical, I may need to access things such as CLIA waivers, personal or professional building insurance, utilities, phone, website, operating manuals. And this is just a good overview list of to think about. So as I said, when we get started, what do? We construct a business plan. Because the business plan will not only allow us to have it to show to investors, but it will allow us to forecast to target market what is our secure startup funding. And then also we have to create that legal business entity. Don't be intimidated by this. 60% of new owners were startups in the United States. In businesses about 2 years, 50, to 1,800 square feet of spaces may be what all you'll need. A lot of community pharmacies or traditional pharmacy businesses, consulting businesses, don't take up a lot of square feet. But when you're determining what you want to need in size, that's important because you pay by the square foot. Starting opening inventory. The other thing is, a lot of times your wholesaler again may help you set up this initial inventory. They also may give you credit and not have you pay back what you owe on the inventory until you start bringing in money. Sometimes they'll give you anywhere from 90 days to 6 months dating. You also, to be able to go, when you look at traditional pharmacy businesses, you want to forecast, when will I break even? Most community pharmacies that start up take anywhere from 12 to 18 months before they break even. And so planning, but don't be intimidated. Through this course and next, through your own research, this will give you the confidence to be able to do this. One of the things you want to think about is, what is the name of your business? Think of the name, why it's so important. It creates the image of your company. Make sure the name fits your business. Make sure the company name is easy to pronounce, spell, and people can remember. Research the name to make sure that it's available. Do you want a logo to be part of this business? A website is almost necessary in today's world. Insure your business name. So what do we usually have to do? If it's a corporation, it's insured when you incorporate, and a lawyer can assist you with this. Other ways you can do this is you actually file with the county clerk in your county, and you actually publish the fictitious name. To operate within the law, to apply for a business license or permit, you need to have the business name. It's proof to the IRS that you are a business. You may also have to purchase seller permits. And a lot of times too, Board of Pharmacies, depending upon which state, you may not need to have a license if you're not dispensing, but there are several states have now written laws that if you are doing clinical programs such as collaborative practice, immunization, that you do. Also too, if you're going to go into business, you'll need a DA license. Other things you have to think about is obtaining insurances. Depending upon the nature and complexity of your pharmacy business, you'll know everything from general liability to professional liability to fire to workman's comp to product liability to health to business property and disability. And one of the things is, when you go out to find these liability insurances, it's always strongly encouraged that you actually bid for it and investigate different companies to get the best price and the best coverage. So, Mr. Olin Sykes went through in some good detail about the basic structures, but let me just give you an overview. There's three different basic structures. There's sole proprietor, there's partnerships, and there's corporations. And I just want to give you the pros and cons of each. If you're a sole proprietorship business, it's the easiest and the least expensive to get started. So basically, you're the sole owner of the profits and losses. You total control, and there's less reporting in this type of business structure. This is a good type of business structure maybe if you're just a consultant. The disadvantage of it is there's unlimited liability and you're responsible for all debt. So a lot of times sole proprietorships, especially if you worry about liability, such as making a med error, and even in consulting, because if you're making clinical recommendations, there is risk for liability. So sole proprietorship may not be there. The other thing too, sometimes sole proprietorship has less availability for capitals and loans because it's going to all be based on your financial strength individually and maybe not the business itself. And there's limited growth potential. Death, illness, or injury can endanger the business. Who's going to cover for you if you would get sick or hurt? Another way is partnerships. Two or more people agree to share ownership. This is great to have more available talent, resources. But remember, partnerships is often like a marriage. So there can be good and there can be bad. The disadvantages of partnerships is that there's unlimited liability again. So it could come back not just to your business, but to your own personal possessions, what you own. You're responsible for each bad debt. And sometimes it's also difficult to raise large sums of capital if you're looking for expansion growth or you fall into financial hardship. One of the most popular types of business structures is the LLC. This limited liability corporation partnership. Partners risk only their investment if they do not participate in the management or control of the business. The advantage of this, general partners have additional capital to invest. Limited partners have limited liability equal to their investment. The disadvantage is limited partners have no control over the management of the business sometimes, and partnership profits are taxed as income to the partners. Another type of business structure is corporation. The downside of corporations is it's very expensive, it's very regulated, it's significantly taxed. And a lot of times what makes it difficult is you can be taxed twice. You can be taxed for the additional income that you're bringing in from the business, but then you can also be taxed for the net income profits. There are advantages. Ownership can be readily transferable, increased opportunities for growth and fundraising. The disadvantages is lots of government regulations, have to hold stockholders meetings, and that risk of double tax. Probably the most popular business structure in pharmacy is the S corporation. This allows small businesses to have its income taxed to the shareholders as if the corporation were a partnership. There's limited shareholders and only one class stock is allowed. A specific portion of the corporation's receipts must be derived from the active business rather than the passive investments. So this kind of gives you the best of both worlds. But once again, I encourage everybody that you would consult a lawyer and even a CPA for recommendations because there's tax implications when you're setting up a business structure. A limited liability company, limit legal structure, does allow owners, protection from personal liability. The advantages of LLC partnerships have complete management and control of the business. The disadvantages is that, LLCs with more than 20 partners, that you have to hire a manager, and then it also requires you to file an articles of organization, basically the bylaws of the company. Another type of business structure, especially if you're in consulting or you're working with other healthcare professionals, might be independent contractor. Consultants often choose this structure, like vendors, except they perform intangible services. The one thing is an employee or independent contractor is independent If the company specifies only desired results of the project and company does not have the right to direct the person with respect to when, where, and how the project is performed. It's very important that you seek, legal and CPA advice on this to make sure that the IRS truly looks at you as an independent contractor. Regardless of whatever business structure you choose, I strongly encourage you, starting now, is think up to yourself, how much money do I need to save down the road? As you get ready to graduate the next couple of years, think about, instead of going out and buying the most expensive brand new car or the most expensive house, what are your goals for 5 to 10 years down the road? You don't necessarily have to have all your college loans paid back. You don't necessarily have to have a ton of money in the bank. But you need to have good credit rating. You need to have some good sound. Think about purchasing a house, having equity. These are things that help you when you're establishing a business, especially getting credit down the road. As I said before, besides finding the name of the business, the structure, there's lots of things that go in, such as you will have to develop the business organizational structure, job responsibilities, job descriptions, name and positions. The other thing that you need to think about is location, location, location. Where do I want my business? Things to think about. Is it easy for vehicles to enter and park where I want my business to be located? How many parking spaces are available for the location? How easy to get in and out of the business? The other thing that I recommend when you're researching where to have your business is whatever town, municipality, or city you're going to practice in, go to that area and find out what is the building permit of where you want to lease or build. What is the 10-year road plan around that area? If you pick a location and you find out they reroute the highway in 2 years, well, that's not a good sound, business of where it might be located. As I said before, location, location, location. So wherever you pick your business, depending upon whether it's a traditional pharmacy or a consulting business, what is the visibility that you want for your customers, your patients to come? Most of the time, you want it somewhere that it's visible, that it's easily accessible when they're out running errands, coming home from work. And as a result, you don't want to be in an isolated, inconvenient place. A good location with good accessibility in a growing community is ideal, but remember, the most visible location may not always be the best location for your pharmacy. The most prominent location, may ultimately also depend upon your competition. Because remember, visibility comes at a premium expressed in dollars per square foot. Don't buy more than you need. The other thing that you want to research when you're making a location is, what are the demographics of the area of the business? I will show you some target marketing later on this semester, and one way to research it is a website called epodunk.com. And you want to think about, what is the income of the area? How many doctor's offices? Where are the hospitals located? All these different things in researching that, how viable will my business be? Who will be my healthcare professionals as I go with the business? Sorry about that. I bumped the button there. So, as I said, we want to think about what type of demographics does this neighborhood sustain, and researching that's very important. Another aspect of finding the location is the size. I said earlier that depending upon what type of business you are, if it's a traditional community pharmacy, where are you going to be located from visibility is important, but what do you plan to do with that space? Do you plan to sell different various type of products up front? Do you plan to have a clinical conference room? Do you plan to have maybe some type of lab testing? But the key rule is, don't rent more space than you need. But your business plan should anticipate growth and expansions where you can provide niche specialty services that can distinguish you from the rest. A tip to think about is look for space that might offer expansion opportunities to adjacent or easy complemented located space. Because the problem is, if you as you grow the business, relocating can be a risky venture. Maybe that the landlord is willing to put into the lease that if there's additional space becomes available, you'll be the first one offered and right to refusal. And remember too that you do have a little bit of leverage and negotiating power. Pharmacies to the public are usually an anchor business in the shopping plaza, and a shopping plaza with a pharmacy can bring a lot of other traffic to other businesses. I'm going to take a pause here, and I want to talk about, I've been talking about there's different opportunities out there besides owning a traditional business. I did send to you an email about that virtual entrepreneur summit. And even if you don't join it, take the time and just click the speaker and look at the different speakers and read about their profiles. Give you an example of a pharmacist named Mickey Finnan. And he developed a company called Medication Advisors. And basically what happened, he had an idea for a business idea, applied through the American Society of Consulting Pharmacists, who actually represent a lot of pharmacy and geriatrics and long-term care. And he was awarded this because he wanted to develop a fee-for-service component of senior care practice in the community pharmacy. And one of the things that he did that was unique was he created a website where he could do virtual consulting. So as we are talking about space and location, remember, you want to plan out, what am I going to do with that space? Another key thing you need to think about is what is your hours of operation? Because depending upon your business, make sure your business is open long enough to match the needs of your customers, but being open too long can have negative consequences. Besides inventory in a traditional community pharmacy, the most expensive thing, and even in a consulting business, is salaries and labor, especially pharmacist labor. So you need to determine what is the hours of operation of the other businesses in the area. What is the traffic count in that area? Because long hours may not always be best. You are starting to see in the industry, although we have many chains that are open long hours, there are several chains, especially in different parts of the country, are cutting back their hours, even cutting back times they're open Sundays. In an era where we're pushing more for medication synchronization programs, refill reminder programs, there is opportunities to control your workflow, and therefore being open all the time, every day, for 12 hours a day may not be needed and also may be costly. Offering delivery is a way to help, counteract of what your hours of operation are. When you're looking to lease a space for your business, think about a couple things. Too long a lease may find yourself paying for rent or space you've outgrown. Another thing that could occur is that although we hope that your business is successful, that there is always a potential that it could fail. The one good thing about community pharmacy business is that there are things to, help pay off the debt if you do fail. You can sell your inventory, and a lot of times you can sell your prescription files to a local competitor at a significant value. But the one thing, if you go out of business and say you have a 4-year lease and you went out of business after 2 years, you're still on the hook to pay for those 2 years. One of the tips is ask the landlord to consider a series of short-term leases with multiple options to renew. For example, ask for a 2-year lease with 3-year options to renew, creating in fact an 11-year lease. Now, the one thing in this type of negotiation, you'll have a little less leverage, and you actually may pay a little bit more, but especially in those early days where you think you're at the most vulnerability and greater risk for possibly not staying in business, this is a good option. As I said before, that medication advisor company, one of the things that they did was they thought about, do I need hours of operation? Do I need a lease? And basically, what they did was they rented just a small office space, and they developed a website. They also focused on three distinct geriatric markets. So they, instead of the business coming to them, they went to the business. They went to retirement, independent living communities, geriatric care managers, and went to senior centers and other community centers giving presentations to help get private pay patients. So my point in this thing, as I talked about, it doesn't always have to be a brick and mortar place, depending upon what type of business you want. Now, besides trying to get short-term leases, you can also increase your bargaining power by taking necessary steps to familiarize yourself with the contents of the lease. Don't pinch pennies. Get expertise to help read you the lease, whether it's an attorney or maybe it's a family, a friend, or relative who has done this multiple times. Another thing about when you're negotiating a lease, come with, no emotions. If you've ever played poker, the one thing is when the poker player's holding their hand is they want to remain emotionless so that the other players don't think do they have a good hand or a bad hand in the game. You want to do this thing in business too when you're negotiating a lease. Enthusiasm or anger expressed to the landlord could cost you in unfair lease terms. Other provisions to think about too is you want to discuss about the potential for subletting if something happens. Most leases prohibit this, but you want to evaluate could this possibly be if somehow the business would fail. You want to also look at the lease. Some leases become null and void. Say that you want to bring other partners without the landlord's permission. So you need to think about all those things when you're reading the lease agreements. And so, as I said, our entrepreneur, he went a different way. He thought about the marketing aspect. He thought about how his clinical service could possibly, bring ways to prevent hospitalizations, increase the need of level care. And he started out with a small space, a closed-door pharmacy. Didn't have a lot of advertising. Used a lot of web advertising, as I told you, targeted marketing. So, as I said before, you want to really think to yourself, what is your business and what do you need? Finally, as we wrap up lease negotiation, you want to think about, the size. What do you actually need? Because you should only pay for the space that you're leasing. The other thing you want to think about is, don't pay for unusable space. If you're working in an office building environment, you don't want to be paying for commonly areas that's used by other tenants. Don't go off their floor plan, but get a business blueprint of what is needed. Understand the key provisions of a pharmacy lease prior to negotiation. Negotiations will take time. And like I said, if it falls apart, be prepared to walk away. Think of other options of where you could be located. Another thing to think about in the lease is what type of signage am I allowed to put out there? How am I able to advertise? Is there a sign along the road that I'm allowed to put things? Am I allowed to put different types of lighted signs? And the other thing that it may not always be the lease, but you may also need to check with what is the governing bodies agreed. Different communities only allow different types of signage. So we talked about leasing. We talked about entrepreneurs thinking about you don't always have to have the traditional space. The next thing is, when I'm starting my business, after I've figured out my business structure, where I want it to be located, is what permits do I need to get? Now, I did forget to ask when I did the chat session with you guys, are you all from Pennsylvania? But I'll just use Pennsylvania as an example. And I said before earlier that Pennsylvania actually requires only a license traditionally right now for those who have a traditional community pharmacy or hospital pharmacy or long-term care pharmacy. There is no real provision if you're just starting a consulting business. But other states, you want to check their Pharmacy Act, and who knows, someday the state of Pennsylvania may require it so. I provided the link for you to be able to go check out what the pharmacy permit looks like. But the pharmacy permit is rather simple. It's only $125. This is billed biannually, so you pay for your pharmacy permit and your pharmacy the pharmacy company license on odd years, whereas you pay for your pharmacy license on even years. Things that go into the pharmacy permit: you have to submit a drawing. There are specific things in the drawing of how long is the counter. You have a sink in the area. So there's a lot of different building aspects that need to be put into that. Who are the owners? Hours of operation. So before you even submit the permit, you really want to have your business plan in place. If you plan to sell controlled items, you'll have to acquire a DEA license. The average price for a DEA license is around close to $600 for 3 years. The other thing you have to think of, if you're requesting for a business registration, you want to check the municipality in, what it costs for the name of your business, the address, tax ID, phone number. Sometimes you need a vendor permit for the local municipality. Other permits you may need is permits to sell food. State sales tax number you have to acquire. Like I said, I talked about the food. The other thing that you need to get license permits if you want to get accredited to do Medicare billing. You'll also have to acquire an NPI number, which that usually is pretty minimal in cost, if any. And, if you do go into Medicare B accreditation, you will have opportunities for things such as immunization billing. The NPI number is needed for you to be able to bill third-party contracting. Other additional items you may think about: what are the costs for maybe some certifications I need? What if I want to sell diabetic shoes? I may need to go to classes to learn how to do that and become certified. What type of MTMs are offered in the area that I could do vendor contracts? Examples: Marixa is a contract. Here in Pennsylvania, we now have the Pennsylvania Pharmacy Care Network. What are the immunization contracts? What is there any permits I need to pay for? Allowances. Is there anything I need to do for if I want to sell lottery or food? If I'm thinking about going into selling durable medical equipment, one of the things that occurred when the Affordable Care Act was passed, that if you are only going to do about $5,000 in sales per year, you do not have to become Medicare accredited for a pharmacy. But if you think that you're going to do greater than $5,000 in type of DME business that is associated with Medicare, you need to become accredited. And so to become accredited, it may take up to 6 months. And so initially when you start your business, you may not be able to bill for Medicare B. The other thing too is that in terms of, there's companies out there that can help you get accredited. You can actually do it on yourself using the CMS website. But on average, it's going to cost somewhere between $3,000 to $4,000. But during this accreditation, it goes beyond just being, accredited to say I want to get a license. They make you also put in your policies and procedures, put in ways you hire people, the way you do exit interviews. So a lot of the things that go on in Medicare accreditation are actually good for pharmacies because it teaches you how to have the structures and the organizational structures that you'll need to have an operating business. Other additional startup costs to think about is the build out an efficient layout and plan. Look for sources for, opportunities that if I need to buy fixtures, maybe I can buy them used, but still good. I'll have to install sink and counter areas in the pharmacy based on the State Board of Pharmacy. Obviously, we will need surveillance cameras for both internal and external theft. I strongly encourage. One of the biggest things is, theft is one of the other key components that can hurt a business. And not just theft of somebody coming in to rob you, but shoplifting and sometimes internal theft. So everybody having passcodes, who has access to what things in the pharmacy or into the point of sale system. Startup costs, I said, is important for your computer and point of sale system. They are going to be the driver of your business, especially producing financial reports for you to analyze. Ancillary supplies such as your bottles, your vials, your labels, your printers, your ink. You'll probably need at least 2 refrigerators, maybe 3. One refrigerator to store the meds, one for your second one for for patients to pick up meds you need to store, and maybe a third for your employees. The other thing is under state board of pharmacy permits that it's required that you have online drug references or textbooks, and so those need to be purchased. And actually, if you are inspected, they'll ask you to show, if you're doing online, your licensing and is it actually paid up to date. As I said earlier, one of the biggest things you want to research is who is your wholesaler, because a wholesaler, besides providing drugs, can give some also key other things. They can help you find companies to help with third-party contracting. And third-party contracting companies do more than just help you set up contracts. Third-party contracting companies actually will also help you in once you have contracts. They'll also help you do what's called reconciliation of your payments. So if I bill out X amount to third parties for insurances this week, and then I get a check in another 2 to 3 weeks, I want to make sure that I get paid for everything I billed out. And I can share with you there are times where there are mistakes. Sometimes there's opportunities to rebill. There's price increases. And so a third party, they call them a PSO. They are usually a representative that you pay. You do pay them a fee per transaction usually, but they can also help save you numerous amounts of money. As I said before, the wholesaler can also help, steer you of what are good computers, point of sale. They can give you references of other pharmacies that use them, that are not necessarily direct competitors of you, so that they might be able to provide advice. Or you can maybe visit their pharmacy and physically see the computer and point of sale in action. Other things they can do is maybe help you recommend what are good companies to partner with in automation, what are good companies to partner with clinical software, IVR software, voice, callers. The other thing is that, the wholesaler will help you a lot of times get your initial inventory and actually set up terms that you won't have to pay it right away back until you start making some money. Other things, as I said before, insurances, utilities. Obviously, you're going to need, fast speed internet, your phones, having a phone system that has multiple lines, having a phone system that can have IVR. Another thing is you want to be able to, find out how to contract to do electronic prescribing. Developing a website, whether you hire somebody, but websites are very good and probably a necessity. The other thing is that although you can do your own website, are you, savvy enough to know how to do analytics that when somebody does a search for you on Google or some other search engine, are you rarely showed up when it's in that location of pharmacies or the services you offer? The other thing is your policies and procedures for organizational structure. And as I said before, Medicare B accreditation will require to see those, and so going for accreditation will help you get organized. You'll need things such as your employee handbook that shows your job descriptions. How do you, do reviews to do salary increases, your benefit packages if you offer that to employees, your HIPAA. Most third-party, especially Medicare D insurances, require you to have your employees go through fraud, waste, and abuse. If you do immunization, you're going to have policies and procedures, and your pharmacists and those who are working with a pharmacist that might potentially get sticked by a needle go through OSHA training. Other things is that if you're going to maybe do other clinical services, you may think about, what do I need in terms of maybe collaborative agreements, waste management and shredders, especially to protect against HIPAA. What's my cost that I want to do with marketing and advertising? And also, I need to think about inventory control. But remember, I'm giving you a lot of information in these slides, and this is more of a snapshot of everything that goes in there. Between this semester and next, we'll tackle a lot of these different topics. You'll explore these different topics as you're writing a business plan. But remember, all this stuff is necessary, but your business is going to be successful if you can initially think about What is the mission of your business? What is the vision? What is that niche? What is setting me apart from other businesses? And the other thing that when we talk and discuss about your future business plan is how does this idea become something that can actually make money and be profitable and allow me to sustain that this actually will be my income and provide for me and perhaps my family or future family. But don't be intimidated by all this, as I said, that you can be successful. And so, as I said before, and I have these facts on this slide, I'm not going to read them. You can read them for yourself. We already talked about this. You can do this. So let's look at some pharmacy ownership case examples. If I was a startup pharmacy, some of the costs that would be initially needed is a computer system and point of sale, which can range anywhere from 20 to 30,000. My starting inventory can be anywhere from 75 to 100,000, but eventually your inventory would get up there maybe between the 2 to 300s. Fixtures, depending upon what is needed to sell over-the-counter items, to store my items in the pharmacy, displays. And then the other thing is when I'm negotiating that lease, remember that I'm going to pay so much per square footage. It's estimated that when you buy fixtures for display that they're going to cost somewhere between $10 to $25 per square foot. So for example, if I have a 2,000 square foot store, that I may need about $20,000 in fixtures. As I said before, a lot of times, you can purchase used. Sometimes the companies will do some good financing that you don't have to have all that money up front. You'd spend some money on your signage, obviously the remodeling or the building inside the store of how you want it. You'll need some startup working capital because day one you're not going to have any money. You're going to have to bring that in, and you're eventually going to have to cover and pay payroll. And that's why you do seek funding, and we'll talk about banks and seeking that. But if I was doing a startup pharmacy, it'd be $175,000. Now, if I'm thinking about there's other opportunities to start up a pharmacy, there's other ways to start up a pharmacy in that I may purchase an already existing pharmacy, which can be more expensive, but there are some advantages to that. Another example of not a traditional pharmacy. CreativePharmacist.com. I encourage you to go to the website and check it out. CreativePharmacist.com was actually started by a group of independent pharmacists who had an idea of how can we train other pharmacists who want to get doing more clinical. Then as they developed these educational tools, they realized, we need a software tool to help these pharmacists to be able to do that. The current PCCN, the Pennsylvania Pharmacy Care Network, actually has went into partnership with Creative Pharmacists to offer at a discounted rate for pharmacies who want to participate more clinically to purchase their software. But this company has only been in existence for several years, but it started out with a dream. It started out as just a website. It started with them going to national meetings, giving talks, that they were able to grow this. And they did have a space that they worked out of, an office space, but it wasn't a lot of space. And so as you are thinking about your niches, it can't be something different. Some summary points. As I said before, a realistic time to break even if you're a startup store, a traditional pharmacy, anywhere from 12 to 18 months. So it's kind of, if you want to do a safe bet, 2 years. What is a realistic time to pay off a purchase store if I'm buying an already current existing store? 5 to 7 years. If I'm doing a startup pharmacy or I'm getting funding to purchase a pharmacy, usually when you're going to a bank to get a loan, that loan and the term of that loan is usually no more than about 10 years. And what you want to do is be able to get that loan, that business, that it is strong enough that it can pay that, that back over that 10-year period. As I said before, we'll talk about junior partnerships, where junior partnerships sometimes allow you to work with an owner, maybe work for them for a little bit, get paid some bonuses to help purchase the company over multiple years. And then sometimes you'll find pharmacy owners willing to be the bank. They will hold a note. You still have to do an illegal agreement, but they will actually have you just pay them directly, X amount of dollars per month for so many years. There are benefits of starting up your own business versus buying an existing business. Obviously, if you're buying an existing business, there's existing history, there's consistency, there's continuity. You already are making money. However, you may be purchasing a company that maybe is not making the greatest money, but you have a belief that you can turn this company around. You also may inherit good employees, but you may also inherit bad employees. And so there might be an image issue with the business that you're purchasing, and you have to change that image. There's benefits from starting up. The costs are usually a lot lower. You're able to create your identity from day one. You don't have all those previous problems I talked about. But depending upon where you're at and what your needs are and how quick you want to get into the business and how realistic of the location could you open up your own business without purchasing a business, it all depends. Obviously, it's a lot easier to start making money quicker by buying an existing business, but you sometimes may need more capital. But there are ways to do this, as I will explain later this semester, with junior partnerships. Once you have a business, there are benefits of maybe expanding and having multiple stores. Why would that occur? Having multiple stores may give you more purchasing power from your wholesaler, may give you more ability if you have at least four, I believe it's now 4 or more stores qualify as a small chain. You may get benefits in contract negotiation. You may have ability to offer better benefits to your employees. The drawback is you can't be at every store. You need to rely on good employees, and we'll talk about the experiences of hiring good employees, training good employees. And as I said, you can't always be in one place at one time. So hopefully this gave you a good snapshot of what it looks like to get into a pharmacy business. I gave you several readings about niche pharmacy and the purple cow. Hopefully you've watched that video already. And I did post the assignment. But I want you to think to yourself, what is your niche pharmacy? Please read the assignment paper that I posted. But this is just a generality that I want you to make some points in. How does this add or revolutionize the current pharmacy practice? Who would be your market for this niche? Who is your customer? Do you need to create your own market? How is this your purple cow? Thank you very much for listening to this lecture. Like I said, hopefully the mic issues have been restored. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to email me. Thank you and have a good weekend and rest of next week. I'll talk to you soon.